Darling! Honey! Dan's recording another one of those bloody audio things again. I don't know. He's doing another one of those bloody Camino things. Indeed I am. Another one. Camino Frances 2023. And thanks for listening. I was out walking today, testing the rain gear for it, and I was listening to a podcast of a fella who had done his own Camino. I think it was the year before last, 2021 that would be. And his podcast was very, very good. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I'll sit down and do one of my own, because as many of these as there are, I think it's individual to everybody. So with this, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm doing this one, the previous ones that I have done, and some stories. Keep it light, keep it fun. But I also want to talk about stuff that was actually relevant to previous ones that I have done. So first of all, the Camino Frances is the one that I'll be doing next month. And that's an 800k walk. And that'll be from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in the south of France, going over the border into Spain and across to the west coast. And that's about 800k, which I may or may not have said. But if I wanted to carry on from Santiago to Finisterre, which is out on the coast, that's about another 90 kilometers. So it could be 8 or 900k, depending on how quick I do it. But it does take about a month to walk. So the first one that I had done was in 2018. And it had significantly changed my life. I think that's one of the things that anybody who has done a Camino and they've been significantly affected by it in a positive way, it's never far from your mind. And how this one happened was sort of a bolt from the blue, kind of lucky. I was out for coffee with two friends of mine at the time, and sort of in the course of conversation, one says to me, "You'll never guess what she's doing." And I hear then that it's the Camino Frances, and I had asked a bunch of questions about it, and I'd say it took about 10 minutes from hearing about it to being completely sold on it. But she was doing it by herself. I thought, well, that would be a little bit awkward now to ask if I could get involved. But that Friday, I think, was about 3 days later, we went out for drinks. A few of us went out for drinks, and after a few, I said, look, this is something that I have been looking for. Would you mind if I joined you? And it was one of those, yes, please, don't let me do it by myself kind of things. And the plan then was for the two of us to head off and do this Camino. And unfortunately, plans changed, and it ended up just me being by myself. But I had put so much time and effort into this that there was no way that I couldn't have gone. And it was a visualization thing. As soon as the conversation happened in that cafe, it was literally like an alarm or something just went off in my head and went, this is it. And it was immediate. So very quickly, I was visualizing the Camino. I'm reading about it. I'm watching every YouTube video available on it. And I'm walking and walking every inch of everywhere to prepare for it. I was so into it. You couldn't have stopped me going. And the visualization thing was massive. There's something I always do, and I don't know where it came from, but I think I was reading Sid Field's book, Screenplay, however many years ago, and he says you need to know when you're writing your story about your characters, you need to know everything about them down to what's in their pockets. And that was something that I always thought about. It sort of, it didn't matter what it was, the idea was always the same. What's in the character's pockets? So it was almost a way of me saying to myself, what is it that I'm not thinking about here that I need to be thinking about? And I always had this, like, this vision of me sitting on a stage, and it's with a talk show host, because obviously I'm a big deal. And the talk show host would always, he'd be talking about some film or something that I've done, and he'll say to me, but just one thing, what was that thing that your character took out of his pockets? And I'll go, I hadn't even thought about that. What is that thing that he took out of his pockets? And this applies to everything. It was to get down to the little details of everything. And with the Camino, I was always asking myself the tiny little details, the small little questions. And I'd picture every little situation that I could possibly be going through. And it gets you so close, 5-6 months away from actually doing it. Visualizing it that clearly, it gets you feeling like you're right there now, living these situations. And what that did was it kept me very calm, very focused, very prepared. But that was something that I applied to all areas of my life. That same kind of visualization, because it gave me control. Think about the little minute details. Where can this go right? Where can it go wrong? Be prepared. It gives me a lot of comfort, a lot of control. And people will say to me, if I told them I was doing something, and there's a few did about this Camino, they go, are you really sure? And I go, it'll be fine. So I get there, and after all of this excitement, I have turned up and I am an absolute bag of nerves. Not that I've missed the plane is an hour late. I arrive, and because the plane was an hour late, I have to wait 3 hours for a bus, and by the time I get to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, I am an absolute bag of nerves. All of a sudden, everything about me was going, why am I here? For what reason have I turned up? What is going on? So I called a bunch of people in the phone book for comfort. Just talk to me here for a little while, because, it's... I feel like I made a massive mistake here. And the following day, it was one of those things where you sort of suck it up and you get started. I've dreamt about this. Let's get going. And I got out onto the edge of town, which is 5 minutes from the albergue or hostel that I was staying at. And there's two roads. There's the road off to the left, which is up over the mountains. The hardest day on the whole Camino, 800 kilometers. The hardest day is day one, up left over that mountain. Or you can go the road to the right, which is a lower road, and it's about 12k of a walk. And I had booked a room to stay on that low, easy road, because a few people had said to me, Dan, take it easy. It's day one. You don't want to push yourself. But I really wanted to go over the mountains. So I get to the edge of town, and I literally stood there, and I looked left and right, and I'm looking for a minute, and next thing, this voice just comes from behind me. How you doing, mate? And I looked down, and there was a small man, about 5'7", in his 60s, with a massive bag on him, bigger than what I had. And we get chatting, and he says to me, so which way you going? I said, I want to go that way. I want to go up over the mountains. I said, which way are you going? He says, I'm going left. I'm going up over the mountains. And I was like, he's going up over the mountains. Okay. I said, have you a room booked on the opposite side? No, he says, I haven't. I'm just going to go and see what happens. And I'm not joking. From then on, I was not on my own for the entire Camino. And I made some of the most unbelievable relationships and closest friends that you could ever have. Now, there's people listening to this who have heard this story many times, but some of you haven't. And I was never on my own. And even after 3 hours, I'm walking uphill with Bernie here. We're talking for 3 hours about absolutely everything. And then the pace started to show, because I was flying along. And Bernie, as much as I had slowed down to walk with him, after a while it was just sort of like, look, I'm chomping at the bit here to get going. Bernie, look, I'll see you over the hill, and I'll meet you in the next town. And then I carried on. I'm walking for about 45 minutes by myself, and then I meet two other people. And that was how it was the whole time. So that experience for me was life-changing, as I said. In 2021, I did the Del Norte, and I did about 250k of that. But I chose the Del Norte because it was different to the Frances. I've already done the Frances. It was tougher, and there's also less people. The Del Norte on average gets about 10% of pilgrims that you would get on the Frances. So the Frances, I think last year had recorded, I think, about 400,000 people for the course of the year had started and completed it. And then the Del Norte gets 10% of that. And the Del Norte is, in my opinion, far more beautiful. It's tougher, definitely, but it is more beautiful. But I had turned up to this not as excited. And I didn't have that same strong visualization of being able to see myself there, doing it, having all the experiences that I had before, but not even before, but I just couldn't see myself properly here. And I think that's it was quite clear actually from when I was boarding the plane. I got on, and for all the nerves that I had, I mean, we're talking months away from doing the Frances. I was living this every day, exhausting people with the conversation. The Camino del Norte, I literally turned up to the airport going, is this the right thing to do? And I got on the plane, and when I had seen the amount of pilgrims that were on the plane, because when you're flying to Biarritz in France, you'll notice everybody has boots on, everybody has a big bag, a 10 kilo hiking bag on them. They're all dressed for a Camino. And I had got there and I thought, you know what? Maybe this will be actually fine. The relief of seeing all these people, I know I'm going to get to meeting some friends, some companions, whatever it might be, will be fine. I get off the plane in France, and as we're going out to get the bus, I noticed that 98% of the plane has gone to a different bus than me. And I thought, they're going to do the Frances. It's basically me and two other people here who are going to do the Del Norte. And I arrived in a room, and I could not see anybody anywhere. Nobody basically arrived with me. So I went for lunch that day, and I'm having a pizza, and I have not seen a pilgrim for about 5 hours at this stage. And as I was having a pizza, I saw two pass by about 200 meters away from me, looking at a sign on the road. And I thought, oh my God, there's people doing the same thing that I'm doing. And it gave me a little bit of hope. But as I carried on, I realised that actually I was doing the Del Norte at a very uncertain time in my own life. You know, I didn't feel confident in where I was. I didn't feel confident in myself. I didn't feel confident in anything really. And I turned up here already being not sure about it. And I went and I did it. And for me, I doubt most of the things that I do, to be honest. I don't know if you're the same, but I doubt most of the things that I do. Is it right? Is it wrong? But I trust always that if I can see it clearly, it'll work out. If I can see myself doing this, it'll work out. No matter how crazy it is, it doesn't matter what it is. If I can see it, it'll work out. And I didn't have that this time. So as I was walking day after day, I could not connect with people like I hoped I would be able. This is obviously in 2021. This is, you know, masks and the coronavirus lockdowns and all of that is still in effect. So the vibe was very different. You can't get around that. The vibe was very different. At least it was for me, but I was turning up not as my best self. And the doubts and anxiety that I would have had ordinarily, it seemed for me that the coronavirus just sort of blew those out of proportion. I couldn't keep a lid on it. So I turn up here and I'm walking and I'm having good moments, but I still feel very disconnected from people. And it was purposeless. I couldn't quite find any period of time where I thought, as I'm walking or as I'm with people, I couldn't find any period where it's like, I feel comfortable. I feel good. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. And I know why. I couldn't find any purpose in it. And about the fourth or fifth day, which is one of my favourite things about the Camino, I was walking with two guys, a Frenchman and an Italian, who had been walking for 2 months together already from a different route. And I'd been walking with them, and we were coming down this mud track, about to take a right-hand turn onto another mud track, and I see two fellas at this turn in the road consulting maps and phones, and that turned out to be Bob and Steve, two American fellas, super fellas, great company, just great guys as well for the next 5 days. And I was very lucky I met them. We got on quite well, but again, I'm still not feeling sort of 100% myself, even though we were eating, at some really lovely places, out having beer and seeing the local sights, and it still didn't feel normal for me. After about the ninth day, for various reasons, we were all finishing the Camino. There was more to do, but we were all finishing the Camino, and that was it. I stayed for about 2 or 3 days and flew home. And the other thing is, which Sheila Live, was I missed my girlfriend. I missed Emma. And from day one, I turned up there. From day one, I turned up, and I was like, how am I going to do a month here if I miss her this much? But, as much as she'll like to hear that is true. I did miss her. So why am I going back to the Frances? Well, at this point, I can clearly see myself there. And I am all in. And in fact, I can't wait for it. That's the truth of it. I cannot wait for it. Why? Because of the road, because of the walk itself. The simplicity of the Camino is something that will always be a draw for people. You pack your bag with 2 or 3 pairs of clothes. You wash them at the end of every day, the ones that you've worn, obviously. You sit down, you have your dinner, you prep for the next day, which could be a 20k walk, and you get up, you pack your bag, have your breakfast, you start walking. And on that road, you're going to meet people. Or you're going to walk by yourself if you want to walk by yourself. And then at the end of the day, you do the same thing. Wash your clothes, have your dinner, speak to people for a while, talk about your day, talk about yourself, talk about them. You get up and you walk the 25k the next day. The simplicity of it will always be a huge draw. And there's a solitude that you have of just walking place to place. I heard somebody describe it today. I think it was the guy I was listening to, his podcast on his Camino. He said there's something to the idea of not staying in a place long enough to dig down into the problems or the issues or anything like that. You sort of turn up, you take what you can, you get the idea of it, you take the good stuff, and then you move on to the next town. He said there's some sort of metaphor there for how you should probably live your life, which is just to take bits and pieces from everywhere that you are instead of digging down too much into it, because it gives you a sort of lightness of spirit and a lightness of heart. And that really resonated with me. I loved that. But the solitude as well that you get while you're out there is of just walking. When you've just time with yourself to think about you, what anything, what you love, what you hate, what you fear, what you're excited about, um, just thinking about yourself, it gets you very close to who you are or who you feel you are. And then you've also got the people. And the people are, there's something very special about the people, because one thing I've heard many people who've walked the Camino say is one of my favorite things is that people turn up and you ask them a question, straight away you are going to get the answer to that question in a real manner. Not the how are you? Oh, I'm grand, I'm good. Good, yeah, not too bad. You're going to get a real answer. Why are you on the Camino? The answer will be a real answer. And that depth of conversation over miles and miles and miles, over days and weeks, your connections to each other are just incredible. It's different. You really know somebody, or you feel you know somebody, but as much as you can in a space like that, you do. You get to know somebody a lot. And another fella said it, that you could be walking up to 70 hours with somebody over the course of a week. 70 hours. And he said, that's more time than I have spent with my closest friends in 6 months. And out here, you're doing it all the time. If you want. If you want, you can be by yourself. But the people, for me, are the big reason why I'm going back to the Frances. So the Del Norte was potentially a mistake on my part, in that in a time when people were already feeling isolated and people were already separated and afraid to be in contact with others, I walked out to the Del Norte, which is renowned for being quiet. And I did it off season. I think I did it in October. So it was quiet. And what I really wanted was people. So for the Frances, this is why I'm doing it. The people. The excitement and the energy of it all. Let's talk. Let's just have a bit of fun. And that's another big one, is let's have some fun here. Because I am normally a people person. And I felt that slide away a small bit in the last few months. But I am a people person. And losing focus on that has kind of made me unhappy or less happier. So you're going out here and you're going to go, do you know what? Let's find some people from everywhere in the world. Let's trade some stories. Let's make some new memories. Let's just bloody have a good time. And also what the Frances and even the Del Norte did was they show you a lot about yourself. They show you a lot about who you are. It did for me. It showed me a lot about what I'm capable of, what I really feel, what I really think about things. You just get to know about yourself. And again, if simplicity is a big draw for people out here, knowing that you're going to learn a good bit more about yourself will always be a draw for people. But is going back a bad thing? I had such a great time the first time, life-changing. Is it bad to go back then a second time? Only if I turn up with the idea of I'm going to have exactly the same kind of trip as the first one. Only if I turn up with the idea that the expectation and the bar has to be that high in the first place and that I will hit it. But if I also just realise that it's the same road, but I'm different and I feel different and the people are different. I'm not walking with any of the people that I've been with before. I'm walking on my own. The people are different and I'm different. So if the only thing that's the same is the road, then there's no reason to worry about going back and doing this again. You know, I've seen God knows how many people have done Caminos 5-10 times, the same one. And it's always, I heard one guy say he's done the Camino 9 times, and he said every single time I do it, it gets me closer to who I truly am. So I really think it's about your expectations. And that's what I was told on the first night that I had stayed in the albergue in St. John. The hospitalero said, look, do not have any expectations. Because if you have expectations, you could be let down. Do not have any expectations. Just turn up, walk, and enjoy it. A little bit of water. So I want to do a reading from the book of Daniel. I kept a journal with me for the whole thing, and unfortunately, and I do regret the fact that I didn't write in it the whole time. I wrote in it, I think, very sporadically, but I wrote in it mainly for the first 2 weeks, and then after that I had stopped. But it's because when you're around people all the time and things are happening, and you don't really have the time then to venture off and sit down and write. But on this journey, I do want to do this more, because there's real value in it, especially looking back. There's value in it at the time, but I'm looking forward to that just creeping off into a corner on my own and doing the writing. But I actually want to write a little bit about the people that I met. And one of them was Chris. Swiss Chris. Can you guess where he's from? So we were heading towards a town called Hospital, which is heading out towards the west coast of Spain. I think we have only a couple of days walking now, and we're finished. And I meet Swiss Chris, and he has walked 3 months from Switzerland to this point here today. And on his back is a 13 kilo bag, and he himself is an absolute... He's about 4 stone lighter than me and 4 or 5 inches smaller than me. And he's carrying a bag 5 kilos heavier than mine. And he's carried that from Switzerland. Long dreadlock hair. Real kind of hippie vibe about him. And we were walking for a few miles together. But I have it written down here. Chris, a young 25-year-old Swiss guy, is someone I met on my way to Finisterre. He was very switched on mentally to the world around him. He walked almost all the way from Switzerland to the same point as me that day over 3 months. His views and ideas seemed very well formed, a benefit of cutting yourself off from the normal life, perhaps. But his pack weighed 13 kilos on a body weighing at least 4 stone less than mine. I said to him about his 2 kilo sleeping bag, which he had carried in the snow in Switzerland to this blazing hot sunshine now in the west coast of Spain. I said to him about his 2 kilo sleeping bag, you have money. Why not get rid of that and get a lighter one? He said, no. I enjoy living my life, not working for my life. Every euro I spend is a euro I have to earn back. And then he followed that up a couple of minutes later with something that he had said changed his mindset. He said, the money you have is your freedom. The money you need is your slavery. A lot of people listen to that and they'll go, what a load of crap. But I suppose there's a lot of truth to it, you know, and this guy wanted for very, very little. I mean, by the look at him, he barely wanted for food. You know, he was so small of a fella. But as we were just getting to the edge of Hospital, my albergue is booked further on, and he was like, okay, I'm going to say goodbye to you here. And we were standing on the edge of a forest, really, as well. I said, where are you going? He says, I'm just going to live like a monk in the forest and be by myself. And I was like, okay. Yeah, you do you, boo. You look, it's got you this far. You do your thing. And that was it. But I absolutely loved it. I loved that. What an advantage to be able to be out where I am now, where a lot of people probably wouldn't consider going, to be here and have this conversation And then just have the guy say he's going to live like a monk. I'm like, this is bliss. In a different way. It's not quite the same, but that's why it would be different. Earlier on in the journey, and I think this is the power of the Camino. Earlier on in the journey, I spoke to a Dutch woman, and I'll backtrack a small bit. I was walking, I think, with Richard at this stage, who was absolutely one of my best friends on that whole trip. I think myself and Richard had stopped in a small cafe or coffee shop in the mountains somewhere. Rainy day. And as we sat inside, it was quite cozy. As we sat inside, we were in this almost like a room off of the main corridor. And this woman came in, crying her eyes out. Immediately I went over to talk to her, because obviously it's not nice to see a woman who was clearly distressed like she was. And I spoke to her for a few minutes. We got to the problem, which was that she had turned up I think the year before with a few people. And what she really wanted was to walk the Camino by herself. And she said that she had turned up this time by herself. And what she really wanted was to walk with people. And she couldn't find anybody to walk with her. And we I think I'm a couple of days into the trip at this stage. I was very lucky. I picked up some people minute one, day one. She had turned up wanting to do it by herself, and then realised that actually she wanted to do it with people. And what I said to her was, you're going to be fine. You're going to find your crowd. And I said to her, which is an old mantra on it apparently, is the Camino provides. I said, you will be fine. And a few days later, myself and Richard, I think we were walking towards Burgos, and we were walking through an industrial part of the city, and we stop again, would you believe, at another coffee shop. And we're loading up on water and getting a coffee and everything else. Sun is splitting the stones, and I see her smiling ear to ear, and she's with a few people. And they're all walking together, and I spoke about it with her for a minute, and she had said that, you know, they'd met up a day or two prior and they just walked together ever since. And I said to her, I told you. And sort of with that, it was a very brief conversation. It was just one of those things where we kind of knew. I said, I told you. And then sort of waved each other goodbye. And I hadn't seen her, I don't think, on the Camino after that. But that was a really powerful one. And I'm delighted actually she got sorted. I have down here about following my gut. And I said, as a side note, the wild and harebrained schemes that I've picked up and ran with, without initial thought, have actually been the ones that have given me the most. Initially, it was to connect to the Camino, to commit to the Camino, upon just hearing about it. The decision, the day I left Roncesvalles, to take the harder road that I initially wanted to take, and not the safe one that I already had a room booked on, meant meeting the Aussie, Bernie, Richard, Jack and Jill, literally their names, and all who came after. And I booked that room on the safer route because of the advice mainly of a few people in my life. It's day one, Dan. You don't want to push yourself too hard. But I wanted the hard road. I wanted the one that made me work and to feel, a bit of pain, or to feel the reward. I wanted all of that. Yet, I almost bowed to the advice of two people who advised me based on their expectations of what they could do, and not me. Before a step is taken out from St. John, the idea of a 30k day, let alone many of them, makes you pause and say, am I fit enough? What if I get injured? This could be really hard. And then after a week, the idea of a 32k walk means, okay, so what's the terrain like? Many towns between here and there. How many hostels and albergues are there when we arrive? Becomes very matter of fact. The idea of this is going to be hard doesn't feature, You just get on and do it, and then you discuss the events of your day with your people in the next albergue. The point being that when I was stuck at that literal fork in the road right at the very beginning, I chose the hard road. And in doing that, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And I suppose that for me on this is me sort of trusting my gut, following my gut. The last Camino Del Norte wasn't what I hoped it would be because I wasn't where I would like to be. But this one feels right. This one feels like, you know what, Dan, trust your gut, follow your instincts, go and do it. And I'm turning up and I am having a boatload of fun. A boatload of fun. I don't care. I don't care what happens. There's 800k being walked and I'm having a boatload of fun. And then when I get back, I've got about 2.5 weeks before we start shooting my next short film, Echoes, which we have the GoFundMe on right now. I think we have 950 raised out of 4,500, which is unbelievable. I said it the other day that when I got that first 20 quid donation in, it was almost as if someone said to me, Dan, there's £1 million, go and have a good time. It was absolutely, someone gave me money. They actually voluntarily gave me money to do this. So I am delighted to have that kind of support, and an awful lot of people, you know, got involved after that, and we're on our way. We've got the crew, we've got the actors, and we're still in the middle of a location scout, but we have half of that done. And I go from a Camino which I'm hoping will be, and kind of expecting it to be, a positive experience, and then coming back and leaping straight into another one. So you just got to keep that consistency going. But yeah, look, that was my own little take on my previous Caminos and why I'm doing this one. And I just wanted to share my story. I think everybody who has done a Camino, they have a story to share. And they will share it time and time again because, you know, at least for me, it changed my life. So I'm looking forward to hopefully having that happen again. So thank you very much for listening. And if you haven't considered doing a Camino, do it for a week. Just see. Do it for a week. Thank you very much.